Hello, Dr. Suzanne Bechtel here again, and this video tutorial covers Rule 38 of ALWD concerning quoting large blocks of text.
All right, so here we're in ALWD. Let me pop over to Rule 38, page 392. And of course, mine's going to look a little different than yours. All right, so anytime we are going to quote something, it's a way to protect ourselves from plagiarism. So Rule 38 is really important because we want to make sure that you quote as often as you need to. The more you quote, the better, because your chances of getting in trouble are going to lessen. So the beginning of Rule 38 goes into when you should quote. When you quote, you need to quote accurately, meaning word for word, exactly how they wrote it. And then Rule 38.3 tells you that there's two different ways that you can quote a rule. One of which is a short quotation. The other one is a long quotation. So short quotations is going to be based off Rule 38.4. And long quotations is going to be 38.5. So 38.4 goes into short quotations, and 38.4a tells you what a short quotation is. So it's 49 or fewer words is a rule of thumb. 49 or lower. So if I have 50 words, it's not a short quotation. But if I have 47 words, it's a short quotation. So unfortunately, you do have to count. And I'm going to show you next on the video for next week how easily to count so that you know which direction you need to go in. Word has a fabulous little word count that it does for you, and all you have to do is highlight the paragraph, which is sweet. But if it's 49 words or lower, you're going to use a short quotation, and if it's 50 words or more, then you're going to use Rule 38.5, which is called a long quotation or block quotation. So it's going to change the format. So I'm going to go back up to 38.4. 38.4. And for example, this is the quotation that they've got here is something that you're going to be taking a look at. So if like this sentence says the 8th Amendment's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. And here's where the quotation starts. You get the open quotation marks there, and you've got the closing ones at the end. So how many words is in this particular quotation?
11.
11, exactly. So so this is taking 11 words directly from the case. So we use the opening and closing punctuations. And then if you notice at the very end of that, the period goes inside of the quotations. So that's that's Rule 38.4b. You keep the original, sorry, I apologize for that. You keep the original punctuation and you're going to put it inside of the quotation marks. So that is a perfect example of a short quotation. And then you finish off the sentence with your citation. So here the example is a citation of a case. For the purposes of this memo, we're not working with cases. We're dealing only with statutes. So it's going to end with the statute citation. But for right now, don't worry about that. I just want you to be paying attention to how many words is in that particular quotation. All right, so there we have 11. That's a great example of 11. There's a couple more examples about the punctuation. We're going to cover that in the next lecture, not this one. But if you pop over to Rule 38.5, I just want you to see how it changes. So for long quotations, you're not going to use the quotation marks. Instead, you're going to be using the block quotation format, which is this concept. Okay, so this is an entire section of a paragraph. Sorry, I can't keep that from popping up. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to copy and paste this into a Word document. So give me just a second. So let's say, for example, we are, oh, I hate that format. I hate that font. Sorry. Times New Roman 12. Okay. So what you're going to see here is that the block quotation, this is going to be a very long paragraph. I'm sorry, a long quotation. So if you highlight the section that you are wanting to quote, when you're looking in Word, down here, it tells you how many words it is on the bottom left corner. So this section that I've highlighted is 84 words. So knowing that we have two rules for ALWD, 38.4 and 38.5, and knowing that this is 84 words, is this a long quotation or a short? Yeah, it's long.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's long because it's over 50 words. All right,
I thought
remember.
you said 38. Sorry, I misheard.
Sorry, 84. 84.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's over 50 words. So we know we're in Rule 38.5. So the format's going to change. Okay. For the purposes of assignment 4, you only have to worry about the cutoffs. You know, is it going to be long or is it going to be short? Okay, for the next lecture video on quotations, the format's going to change. It's not going to be quotations. You actually have to switch it to single spacing, and then you have to indent both sides. So your quotation, instead of using quotation marks, is going to look like this format. This is just an FYI for what you're going to learn later on this week. For right now, I just need you to know my cutoff point is 49 words or 50 words. It's going to tell me if it needs to be a long quotation or a short quotation. That's all I want you to know for right now. Okay. So let's look at assignment 4 real quick. And our first question is, what is the cutoff point for the use of quotation marks?
Is it C?
Yes, it's C. Very good. Thank you, Sophia. So 49 words or fewer tells us it's a short citation, and that's the one that you're going to use the quotation marks for. All right, so when would a block quotation be required?
D, A, and B.
Exactly. The answer is D as in dog, because both A and B would be required to use a block quotation because it's more than 50 words. So A for sure is 50 words, and B, because it's over 50 words, B would also require block quotation. All right, great, great. All right, so number 3. For the following quotation, are quotation marks going to be required?
No.
Are you sure? So our quotation,
Yes.
I'm sorry, our statute language is this section here.
So it's under 49 words.
Exactly, it's under 49 words, so quotations are going to be used here. Does everybody see how we got that? How many words are there that we're going to be quoting?
$26 or $27, I think.
Yes, exactly. I got 27. Perfect. So because it's under 49 words, it's a short quotation, a short citation, we need quotation marks. Perfect. All right. How about this next one? So this is the part of our rule.
I think there's 60, so it would be over.
Exactly. So are we going to use quotation marks there?
No.
No, we're going to end up converting this to a block quotation. Hello, in this video, we're going to be talking about how to format a paragraph in quotations for Rule 38 of the ALWD book. So in the ALWD, you have to remember that we have to talk about how many words are in the quotation so that we know what kind of format we need to use. So if it's under 49 words or less, you have to do a short citation according to ALWD Rule 38.4. If it's going to be 50 words or more, then we have to do what's called a block quotation. So let's take, for example, this first sentence. Let me go ahead and separate that out for you. Okay, so this is my first quotation. Remember how I said that I like to use an introductory part of the sentence? So I usually use a format that says, according to Florida statutes, a burglary is, and then you're going to come up with your language that you're actually quoting. So here's where we need to figure out how many words we have. So Word has a great little feature where it gives you the word count. And that's down here on the bottom left corner. If you notice, it says 157 words is on this page. But I need to find out how many words we have in our particular quotation. So here, if you highlight that section of the quotation without talking about the punctuation in the front or in the back, here it tells me at the very bottom, I have 36 words. Or you can manually count it, but you want to make sure that your count is correct. So here I have 36, which is under the 49, which means I need to use quotation marks and keep it as a sentence. So here what we're going to do is, I'm at the very beginning of that quotation, I'm going to have my open punctuation symbol. And at the end, I have my closing. So here, please ignore this for a second. I'm actually going to take that out for right now. But let's say that enter was the last word. So your period right before the quotation needs to be on the inside, or meaning the left of the ending quotation. It would not be back here at the back. Okay, it would be on the inside. One thing I do want to show you is if you accidentally put a space between the punctuation and the quotation mark, it's going to change it to the wrong direction. So this is the opening one, which matches this one. You need to go ahead and fix that. Put it right next to the punctuation. That way it's facing the correct way. So here's my quotation. And then you have to finish the sentence off with your citation. So this is a statute. So we want to make sure that we're including the subsections of exactly where my reader needs to go look to find that particular site. And you do want to finish it off with the year, and always finish off the citation with a period. The period at the end is very important because this is its own sentence. So that is a short citation. So let's take a look at, let me combine my paragraph again. So here's our next quotation. So according to Florida statutes, and here I've got the new citation, the new quote that we're going to be working with. So here we need to figure out first is how many words I have in here. So my quote starts after the number 3, and it continues on until remain. So if I had manually counted this, it would take me a while, but I've got this cool little feature in Word, and at the bottom is telling me I have 96 words. So bottom left corner tells me 96 words. So what kind of quotation would this require? Hopefully you said Rule 38.5, which means a block quotation is needed. So what we have to do here, there's a couple of different steps on formatting this correctly. So the first thing first is, and I'm going to open up my ALWD book, Rule 38.5. The first thing you have to do is set it off as a separate paragraph. All right, so if you're looking at the example that is on page 38.5, it's going to be on page 397. The first thing you need to do is set this off like its own paragraph. So this is my introduction. That stays where it's at. Then I'm going to pop this section here, and then I'm going to take and move down this Florida statute citation. So here is the section that I'm quoting. So here's where it comes into play, where we have to do a couple of little different things. First of which, we need to convert this over into single spacing instead of double spacing. So that is what page 397 is showing me. I have to single space it. In the middle of the paragraph of the explanation, it says present it in a single space block indented by 1 tab on both the right and the left side. So here I have in my Word document, the section up here that says paragraph has a little button here that is for line spacing, line and paragraph spacing. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch this over to 1.0. That gives me the correct format here, okay? Then I have to indent the sides. So I'm going to use that same button, but instead of the 1.1, down here I'm going to go to line spacing options. And this is where you can do your left and right indentation very easily. So 1 tab is the equivalent of 0.5. So I'm going to switch that number to 0.5, and I'm going to switch over the right also to 0.5. And what that's going to do is it's going to very easily make this indented. The other thing I want to do is change my justification to where it evens everything out on the left and the right hand side. I actually prefer for you to have the entire document with that same format, at least left justified, but a lot of attorneys like to see it to where the justification evens out throughout the entire document. So here I have now indented on both sides and single spacing. And if you notice, there's no quotation marks in the beginning, no quotation marks at the end, because for a block quotation, we remove those quotation marks. The only time you're going to use quotation marks is actually in the short citation. And then the book tells us that we have to go back to double spacing. So everything after that is going to be double spaced. And according to the example, you still have to include the citation here. So even though it might be as part of your introductory sentence, you have to always include the citation here at the bottom. So the example in the ALWD book is showing you a case name. Here I'm showing it to you as a statute. So it has to be double spaced from the actual paragraph, and it has to be flush left. So you want to make sure it's all the way to the left. You're going to include the citation, end it with a period, and then right after that is where you can begin your next paragraph. I'm sorry, your next sentence. So I'm just going to use this as an example. I'm going to drag this down here. So this is what it would look like if I had the block quotation first, and then my next rule, which is oops, and of course I forgot my citation at the end. So this is what it would look like. So block quotation first with my introductory sentence. I've got the correct format for the block quotation, double space, and then I go back to my citation for that block quote all the way to the left. And right after that, I just keep on with my same paragraph. Let me know if you have any questions on this.